Some of you know that a few years ago, my husband wrote a movie, and that movie actually got made, and it got made into a really good movie, and we showed it here, and it was a couple years ago, and it was a really pretty wonderful experience. It got made into one with Robert Duvall and Sissy Spacek and Bill Murray and stars and things like that, and the whole thing was pretty exciting. And now that it's kind of a few years ago, it's just this kind of weird and amazing thing that happened to us a while ago. And I was doing some nursing home visits this week, and I was thinking, that's what I'm going to be talking about when I'm sitting there. So I'm going to be saying, these stars that you've never heard of were in a movie. It was just this crazy and wonderful experience. And one thing happened over the course of it that I haven't talked about too much, and that's that there was some Oscar buzz around the script. And my husband wrote the script, and we put this all together, and we said, well, if you get nominated, that means we get to go to the Oscars. So I have to lose 30 pounds immediately and go get a really expensive dress and all this stuff, and in my mind is going all these places. And so we ended up watching the Oscar nominations for probably the only time in my whole life when there was a possibility that we might go. And so we're watching the Oscar nominations. It's early in the morning, and so we're watching it, and they're reading names, and it gets to Best Original Screenplay, and they're reading names, and they say Scott, which is my husband's name. And our hearts sort of stopped, and then the guy cleared his throat, and he said somebody else's last name. Some other Scott got to go, and his wife or whoever, and it wasn't us. And at the end of the day, we're kind of disappointed, and we thought, wait a second, this is ridiculous. We had a chance to go, and that's more than most people ever get. And I was thinking about it. I was hearing an interview about somebody who got nominated for an Oscar, and I thought, what would it have been like if we actually had gone, and if Scott maybe had won? And he had that golden statue. I mean, what would our lives be like? And then it came to me, pretty much like they are. I would say pretty much the same, because in the course of this whole Hollywood thing that we went through, we met a lot of people, and we met famous people and stuff like that. And the thing is that I've never been so grateful for my pretty basic life in the Atlanta suburbs. And I was grateful for my church. And when I met people for whom an Oscar isn't even enough, I was really grateful that I knew that God loved me, that I was a child of God, and that's what I would hold on to. Even if, all these wonderful things happen, even if we had that statue made of gold, one of my husband's people in his church had somebody make us a fake one. So we have a little fake Oscar that sits on a table, and I thought, you know what? It's just about as good. Because at the end of everything, I thought, I am so grateful to be called a child of God above anything else. And when we got to the end of these, crazy parties and things like that, and we thought, it's never enough, is it? Even if you get to that level, there's always one more level. They were interviewing Robert Duvall, and he was talking about how he couldn't get a movie made because Robert Duvall said, well, I'm not Brad Pitt. And I thought if you interviewed Brad Pitt, he'd probably say, well, I'm not Robert Duvall. There's always another level. There's always something else. There's always a reason why you're not good enough. But when we see this, maybe on TV, we put a lot of faith in that gold statue. It was kind of sounding familiar to me with this reading for today. We put a lot of faith in that gold statue and these people that we see. Well, we almost worship them. Almost. There's something about them that's not quite normal, that we maybe pay a little more attention, that they're a little bit special if they have this golden statue thing. We do that a lot. We put our faith in things that are all around us that aren't necessarily God. I was thinking about the TV show American Idol. There's a Christian song that says, it's from a few years ago, it says, America has no more stars, now we call them idols. I thought, it's not by accident that we call them idols. American idols. And if you've read your Bible and you hear the story this morning, it's a little strange that these people, we call them idols. Who can remember somebody from the first season of American Idol? Not me so much. Maybe one, maybe two. They thought their lives were going to be totally changed and they were going to be these idols. Well, their lives are just like everybody else's. If you have something to hold on to, if you know that you are a child of God and you know what you worship, then your life will still have worth, no matter what fame you have. We went to the Braves game on Friday night. I'm a Cardinals fan, don't throw stuff. But we went to the game. The rest of my family is Braves fans. And we went to the game, and it was this amazing game. It was Chipper Jones's last game. And everything aside about the game, I have never heard such a loud roar. My children had their hands over their ears. I wish I had earplugs when Chipper walked out for his last game. There was this roar and people on their feet, and I thought, this is worship. It felt like this community just outpouring of, it was support and it was applause, and he's a great baseball player, don't get me wrong, but it felt like worship. And I thought there are all these things in our culture that we bow down to, almost. And all he could do, because he's a person, was kind of tip his hat to the crowd, and that, of course, made everybody go absolutely crazy. And he didn't even come back out after the game because he was afraid he was going to get stuff thrown at him. I don't know if y'all saw it on TV, but there were many beverages thrown onto the field. But when people were worshiping him, were adoring him, I thought, he's just a person. I hope that he has his worth in something other than baseball, as good as he is at it. Because all of this fame and all of these things and people even calling you an idol, it's not worth anything if you don't know where your worth comes from. Humans have this long history, obviously, of putting our faith in things that we can see, instead of in the God who we can't. In the book of Exodus, you hear that the Israelites, they ended up making this God, and it was supposed to represent God even. They had the right idea. But previously, in the Old Testament, one time, God told them, don't make images, don't make any idols, okay? Then 2 times, God tells them in a separate situation, don't make any idols. Then 3 times, God tells them, don't make any idols. Make me a house, but don't make any idols out of me. Don't make any images. So 3 times the people have been told, but as God said, they are a stiff-necked people. They are hard-hearted. They don't listen so much, us, the people of God. And so when Moses was up on the mountain and he had been gone 40 days, which in the Bible means a little more than a month and less than a year, and it had been a really long time, and what if something got him up there, Who knows? I don't know, nature, mountain lion, copperhead, something up on the mountain. We don't know if he's coming back. And he was our leader. And so we don't know what we're supposed to do. So they took up a collection, kind of like what we're doing today. I was thinking about what the pledge cards might look like in Exodus, 5 earrings from this family, 4 gold bracelets from this family. That's what they had. And so Aaron said, I'm going to take up an offering. I'm going to take up your pledges. And this was not wrong. This was good. God had told them when they took all this gold with them, the Egyptians kind of gave it to them. Speaking of throwing things, the Egyptians are kind of throwing them their gold on the way out. Stop the plagues and get out of Egypt. So they took all this gold from Egypt, and what they were supposed to do was they were supposed to make a tabernacle for God. They were supposed to make a house out of all of their gold that God could live in, because they were a portable people. They were people who lived in tents. And so they were supposed to make this house out of the gold. So it's not wrong that Aaron would say, okay, it's time to tithe your gold. Let's collect the gold. Let's make this beautiful house for God that God can live in. But instead, they made this golden calf. It sounds really ridiculous to us and really foreign and primitive that they would make this calf and that they would worship this thing. But we like to worship things that we can see. And so who can blame the Israelites when they couldn't see God for a while? Remember, these are people who God led them. God was visible as a pillar of fire by day and a pillar of cloud by night, and they could see God leading them out of Egypt. And then when Moses parted the Red Sea, there was no doubt that God was there, because Moses parted the sea and asked God, and they walked across on dry land, and they could see God so clearly. But now it's been 40 days, a heck of a long time, and they can't see God anymore. And so what they want is something that they can see and something that they can trust. And so they take up all their gold and they make something that they can see, because that's what we all want. We want sometimes to have a God that we can see, that we can put our faith in. And so we still do that. I love what Bert Blenner said on the video. He's out of town this weekend, so I can't pick on him. But I love that he said, "I like to do things that have a tangible result." Don't we all? We like to know when we give our gold that it's going to go to something that we can see. We like to see, things like sandwiches being made for the people of Marietta, for these children, who get free lunches during the year, and they don't get quite enough food in the summer. And so we like to see that our gold is going somewhere tangible. But that's not always what we're called to do. We're not called to worship the gold itself. We're called to worship the God we make a house for. We're called to worship the God that we can't see. And so sometimes our gold goes toward things that we can't see, and we don't even know the result. It's kind of scary to give our gold away to, let's say, the Synod, even though they promise us it's going towards world hunger, a really decent chunk of it for Lutherans. We can be proud of that. And when we give our gold away, and it might be going to Must Ministries down the street, who knows what they do with it? But we're called to take it up and to give it to God and to trust that God is going to live in that dwelling that we make. Because God does not promise to always be visible. The God of the Old Testament and of the New Testament only calls God's self, "I am." That's the promise that God makes. God doesn't say you're going to be able to see me all the time. God doesn't say you're going to be able to give your gold and see this tangible result that you can worship right here. God says, "I am." And that's what we get. We see this God of the Old Testament who, no matter what, God is with them. Maybe not physically what they want, but God is always bringing them back, and God is always bringing them back into relationship with God, no matter what those stiff-necked, hard-hearted people do, until God brings us back into relationship by sending Jesus. It's the end and the culmination of this long, wonderful story that keeps continuing with us, that we have a God that we want to see. And we have a God that we want to worship, and all of that other worship that we give to other things is misplaced until it rests in God. This is God who says, "I am." I am, and that's it. Amen.